Hey, everyone, it's Rich Sheffrin, and you know what? Just as I'm sitting here, I'm actually thinking I might not have even shared this on my page or in my group. That would be a bummer if I didn't do that. Oh well, maybe if you guys can tell, and Milos, maybe you would know. I'm not sure. Anyway, so I want to welcome you guys to this live stream, and if I didn't share it in the Strategic Profits group or on my personal page, I guess. Well, you guys can't share it on my personal page, but you certainly can share it on in the group. So, want to welcome you to the live stream tonight. And what we're talking about is basically using Richard Feynman's secret to focus your thinking and grow your business. And this really came about through a question that I got the other day on a BGS business growth system coaching call. And client was telling me about them using these tools that I've been talking about on some of these live streams, and that led to a question, and that question made me realize that I wasn't covering certain things in the live stream that I think I probably should. And so, what we're going to be talking about today really is a quote that Richard Feynman, something that's been attributed to him, but it's a quote that when you kind of grasp it, which is very easy to grasp, it's nothing hard, and use it as criteria basically for what you should be on the lookout for, what kind of information should you be capturing, what should you be using the thinking tools focused around. It will give you more guidance for that. So along those lines, there's a couple things, right? One of the things I want to cover tonight is really a shift, and we talked about it, I think, in the last live stream. But what I want to talk to you a little bit more about, just to make sure, is this shift in perspective about really how you relate to information. We are inundated with information. Everything that we do involves information, and yet most people don't know the right way to interact with that information, and they're actually using an outdated way of looking at information, and that has consequences in many areas of their lives, and I want to make sure that you don't make that mistake. And so we're going to talk about that shift in perspectives, and when you have that shift in perspective, what happens is that you eliminate a lot, if not most, if not all, info overload, and in addition to that, you also get greater clarity on what information is appropriate versus what isn't, and even guidance as to what type of information should you be looking at in the first place. So that's kind of step one, you could say, of tonight. That we're going to cover that. So if you're just joining us, by all means, let me know where you're joining me from, and also if you've been on several of these live streams or if you've only been on this first one. And if you have been, any favorite topics that you've already kind of heard me talk about. So that's first, right? We're going to talk about the shift in the relation to information for you. And that was kind of preceded by this conversation I had with a coaching client, and we're going to use Richard Feynman's process, you could say. And in addition to that, we'll then go over this process, and it's going to help you know what information you should be looking for, therefore notice it better, therefore capture it. That will help you actually get to the future that you want. And that's kind of the whole purpose, right? To be much more strategic about how you're going about uh, finding information, processing it, outputting it, for what purpose, for what end. That's going to let you know really kind of upfront whether a piece of information is worthwhile kind of consuming or it's a waste of time, right? You're more likely to notice what will help you if you know what it is, obviously. And it should also make you into a more curious person. That people often ask me, what are some of the attributes that um, that my successful clients have? And one of the attributes is certainly self-confidence, a confidence of knowing that they were going to achieve the outcome no matter what, that even though they might not know how. And the other, though, I would certainly say is curiosity as well, that there is an element of wanting to find out more. And and so that curiosity that you gather, um, and actually increase by using this kind of technique, um, I think has you out in the world exploring more, which if it does, it's a good thing. So remember, by the way, that the more engaged you are in this, right, like the more you'll get out of it because you're paying attention, but also that the more engaged you are as far as commenting, telling others, sharing the stream, smashing the like button or clicking on it, whichever, helps not only you learn better because you're active, but helps me obviously because Facebook knows it's worthwhile sharing with other fans of mine and other people through their newsfeed. So I appreciate that very much so throughout the process so that it feels less like a monologue and more like a dialogue. And then last but not least, I want to talk to you about this technique and how you can actually use it in a way that many of you, well, I would imagine almost none of you are using currently. And really, it's about how do you use others to help you get the information that you most want to find. So with all that said, that's kind of what we're going to be covering under this umbrella of using Feynman's secret to focus your thinking and grow your business. So let's go over to the chat here again and kind of see what's going on. Oh, there's Carlos. Let's see. Wow, it's such a clean background tonight. Yeah, I guess I should put up shared in the group, waiting for approval. Yeah, so I guess I did forget, huh, Milos? So maybe I should do that real quick if I can. And let's see. Oh, cool. Thanks. All right, I'm just going into the group for a second here. Sorry, guys. And then we'll get underway. In addition to this, if you haven't already joined our Facebook group, please do so. Boom. Okay, and now let's go to where's my groups? Groups. All right, so there we go. Boom. And one post needs approval. Yes, approve. Cool. All right. So back with you. Sorry about that. And we'll probably not have as many people on today because I didn't, but so be it. Cool. All right. And let me just go back to this for a second. You've seen all my last ones. Cool. Thanks, Carlos. And these live streams are packed with incredible info. Thanks so much for sharing. Cool. And actually, I could probably just move this over here, couldn't I? Yep. And Sid from the newbie. This is fascinating. Thank you. Cool. Tom in Vancouver, first live stream, long-time fan, past mine. Cool. Oh, yes, I remember your last name. This has become a tradition. Thank you for the live streams. They have helped me move forward in my business. Very cool. Glad to hear that, Niels. Live streams have been great. So informative. Cool. I would like you to do a live stream on mindset crucial for an entrepreneur even before they start their business. That is, what is the prerequisite psychology needed to be successful in business and in life? All right, I think that. I can work on that. Can't watch the entire session tonight, but looking forward to watching it this evening. Steel Our Winners is incredible. Cool. Hey, Jim Edward. Oh, I guess I didn't put that one up. So let's do this. Steel Our Winners is incredible. Jim Edward saying hello. Don Miller saying good evening to everyone. Tim Wilson, hey, glad to be here. Cool. All right. Uh, Jane Joseph from Kansas City. Cool. Very cool. All right. So, oh, that's very cool. In due time, Omari. Um, cool. All right. Okay, cool. So, using the Feynman technique. All right. So, let's see. Where should we start? I guess we should start actually with what we were covering last week. That'll then lead us into uh, what came up and then why the Feynman technique. Okay. So, last on Tuesday, I shared with you information about how I process information, how what I used to do, what I do now as far as reading, and how I've upped my reading speed to about 2,000 words a minute, and up to how I listen to audio and video at much faster speeds as well, and what that does for me, right? That it not only helps me go through more faster, but it actually holds my attention better. And because it holds my attention better, it helps me remember it better as well. And as long as I think about it some other time, process it, but think about it at a time other than when I'm processing, I can really process a lot and gather a lot of material. And therefore, the next step of synthesizing it becomes a lot easier. Anyway, that's under the umbrella of what we've been talking about in general, which is using your brain more effectively, using the thinking tools that I've kind of laid out for everyone as far as questions, sentence stems, journal writing, taking that future self perspective, thinking of your future self as an accountability buddy, also thinking about your future self. Who do you want yourself to be? And what do you need to know, learn, and experience to get there in the shortest amount of time, in the most enjoyable way, whatever. But really understanding that if there's anyone that you're accountable to, it is your future self. And that's really the person that you should have the best relationship with. And yet, most of us, when we envision our future self or even think about our future self, the part of the brain that lights up is actually the part of the brain that lights up when we are interacting with a stranger. So we have to make that future self a lot more real. Anyway, we've also talked about mental maps, distinctions, and so on and so forth. And so I've been trying to share, a bunch of different ways of thinking, thinking tools, etc., with you, so that you can employ them to grow your business faster, to achieve the life that you want, to really improve any area of any part of your life. Even though for me, what I focus on for my clients, etc., is business growth and being the most effective entrepreneur you can be. So anyway, so I've been sharing these with the hope that that's what you're using it for. And if that's so, fantastic. That's why I'm doing it, right? And but so I was doing this coaching call, and during this group coaching call, a client asked me a question about some of these things, and it was clear that the question was he was asking me what he should do now with it, but it was clear that based on how he's asking me the question, that he wasn't using it necessarily to solve issues that were immediately present, and that is not necessarily the ideal way, let's say, to use these tools. So what do I mean by that? Well, what I mean is that, it actually, it reminds me of when I used to do private coaching a lot. And it was kind of interesting because I had this problem where I had many, many clients, right? Even though I was talking one-on-one every 2 weeks to a client, right? I had 187 clients. I wanted 150, but by the time we took the page down, we didn't realize that so many people had it cached. So anyway, so we had 187. I had 187 clients, and I was talking to each one for half an hour once every 2 weeks. And so if you do the math on that, that's like close to 50 hours of actually being on the phone talking to people. And I needed to figure out a way to be able to do that because a lot of people came into coaching with what I perceived as really not the right way to be looking at the relationship and not to improve as much as humanly possible. And what I mean by that is that entrepreneurs have to be self-sufficient, or ideally are. And that the best way that I can help someone be more self-sufficient is to kind of put them in situations that force them to be that way. And because if we won't do it without a little push, right? And so what I kind of changed the dynamic, you could say, of the coaching call, where these private calls, by making the onus and the responsibility completely on my client to be prepared for the call and lead me through the call so that they get the maximum value from it, as opposed to me looking at their file and keeping, thinking about them in off hours. And then when they get back on, me having something to say based on what I had been thinking about for them. And you could say it's marketing speak, but it's also true. So it's both kind of that. A good portion of my success is that I've always known what it was that was like the very next thing that I needed to focus on. I needed an answer on. I needed a solution to. And it's your responsibility for you to know that in your business. Like, what are the top 3 priorities in your business right now? And what are the biggest obstacles currently in your path that an answer to or a shortcut around that you believe might be possible? How do you articulate that question? And so I put the onus of responsibility on my coaching clients to do that. And I think that helped them actually give pre-thought to the coaching calls, because the ones that were most organized, that knew exactly what they wanted, knew exactly what they needed to show me to get the answer, grew much more than someone who didn't take that prep work seriously. But the prep work was also part of the training, you could say. So anyway, so I was kind of surprised that this client was give you like some, not to go into any kind of crazy amount of detail, but this client was just getting started with one media channel and was getting opt-ins but not making any sales yet, and wanted to now explore this other channel and was debating which way to explore it. And to me, it didn't seem like the right road to travel down. And it layers over what I was saying about using the tools, but not using the tools necessarily in the right way. And what I was explaining to him is that, there's always a next step. There's always something that is currently like either the next step, the critical path, in project management, that determines when the project actually is going to be finished, because these are the ones that are dependent, right? So it's a critical path. Or, so that's in project management. But in your business growth, what is the very next step that you need to take? And knowing that, or knowing what that is, even the question, gives you a great head start on most, because most people haven't thought that through. They kind of they're like fish in water. They just don't, they're in it so much that they don't ever pull their head out for a minute and say, okay, what is the current context I'm in? What is the challenge? What is the solution that I'm trying to get to? What's the next step in the project? That is what you need to focus on. So if you just launch something like on one network and you're getting opt-ins, so the creative's working, right, but you haven't gotten any sales yet, then you want to focus on getting sales first before, and that is like the most pressing thing. Like, what can I change this page? What can I change this funnel to get a different response? And that would then be like the core driving focus of what I'm reading, what I'm thinking about, what I'm talking to people about, etc. And so I pass that along to you as really the reason that we're covering this. So let's kind of check back in here, and let's see. There we go. Hey, Denise. Happy to have you here again. Good vibes. Thanks. The live streams are all in our group. So I think if you do in our group or on my fan page, Strategic Rich Sheffrin, or the group Strategic Profits, all those videos should be there. I researched a bit and found a great app called Speechify that does the text-to-speech reading and flashing words on the screen at the same time. My speed bumped up to 900 words per minute already. Oh, wow. So it's text to speech and flashing the words on the screen. Oh, wow. And you were up to 900. So Speechify is even faster than uh, voice stream. Oh, that might be music to my ears. Awesome. Gonna have to write that down. Um, all right, cool. So let's now talk about Richard Feynman. So Richard Feynman won the, let me write this down, Speechify. Probably already have it by all these apps. Speechify, WPF. How does it sound at 900 words a minute? All right. So anyway, Richard Feynman. So he won the Nobel Prize in Physics in 1965. He was also known as like a pretty uh, eccentric type guy, which I guess most geniuses in physics are. He was considered a great teacher of physics, and actually, there is quite a bit of video footage of him on YouTube. And just to kind of give you if you're not too familiar with who he is, um, in 1999, they polled the 130 top leading physicists in the world. The British Journal of Physics World did it. And he was ranked as one of the top 10 greatest physicists of all time. It's pretty impressive. So anyway, here's a quote from him. Someone was asking him about thinking or being a genius or whatnot. And he said, you have to keep a dozen of your favorite problems constantly present in your mind, although by and large they will lay in a dormant state. Every time you hear or read a new trick or a new result, test it against each of these 12 problems to see whether it helps. Every once in a while, there will be a hit, and people will say, how did he do it? He must be a genius. So, so this was another thing I learned from Tiago, and this idea of having your favorite 12 problems. Now, I had always thought of like your number one top problem, and I still think that there's a lot of value in doing that, obviously. But there's also value in looking at a bunch of problems that are problems that you'd like to solve, both business and personally as well. Um, so, one of the things that we also spoke about uh, last live stream, or the one before that, was this idea of that because we're surrounded by so much more information, we cannot relate to information the way that we used to relate to it when it was much more precious. And so we talked about how we need to shift our mindset. And this is such a big topic, and I wish I could spend more time on it tonight, but I don't feel like I can best explain it to you yet. I need to think more about it because I think the implications of it are quite profound. But I do want to touch upon it briefly, like we did last week, or I mean last live stream, and that is like shifting from this desire to put information in containers, right, or in buckets, and instead think of having nets and catching streams of information that are whizzing past you. You know, more information will be created in 1 year than you can consume in your whole life. So um, the you're always going to be upside down with it, right? And therefore, this idea of putting information in containers, like taking your emails and putting them in their appropriate folders and wasting an hour a day of your life every day doing something like that, when the search function has gotten so good in email, it seems rather absurd, right? And so that's the thinking that I'm talking about, shifting from buckets to streams. You really need to start thinking, if we're living in a world where information is generated so quickly, and that oftentimes information is like milk or a problem. It doesn't get better with age, it gets worse, right? It's not like wine. And so it becomes outdated quickly as well. So what you've got information, constant change, right? Things getting stale quicker. Uh, the idea of wasting part of your time or life with this fire hose of information coming at you and trying to organize it all will consistently consume more and more of your time, and it's not necessary when you have such good search functions, right? So, but it's also related to what we're talking about right now. Like, you only have so much attention. Where are you going to focus that? You don't want to focus your time and attention being a clerk of information in your life, just moving it around. And yet, you also just don't want to stop and pursue every clickbait headline out there either, or you'll get nothing done. So, thinking about what are the biggest problems, the biggest questions that you are thinking about, wanting to find information about, etc., and they can be related to the next step in your business or the next step for you personally, or they could be something totally different. So I want to share with you um, some of mine. Well, I think before, well, let's see, what do I want to do? Yeah, so let's talk about these questions a little bit more first, then I'll show you some of mine. So, what are the biggest questions, the most driving questions that will most likely, not only are you interested in them today, obviously, but you'll stay interested in them for years to come, that can kind of serve as open-ended research and learning for you. You know, what are those topics? What are the questions behind those topics? The questions that are most likely, they're going to be open-ended, challenging to answer completely, but specific enough to remain relevant and to really guide your behavior. So, you know, if you're going to create some kind of house for your personal knowledge management system, what problems are you designing that system to solve? Right? What kind of information would your future self like to have easy access to? So, with that stated, let's kind of go. Let's see here. Go back to the Q&A here for a second. Uh, There we go. Uh, I had this question. What is your criteria or set of criteria that you based upon to know what are the beliefs that you want your prospects to have? How do you know you have the one belief right before you move to the other one? So you also have a number of beliefs that you based upon, no more than 7. How do you know how many steps? Thanks. Okay, whoa. All right. Um, so Carlos, I'm not sure where this question is coming from. I assume it's like coming from chain of beliefs or something like that. What I would say is this, that when you start, if you start, if you're doing a chain of beliefs, if you start with the one right before purchase, that should be relatively easy. They need it and they need it now, right? Now, from there, what you have to kind of go backwards from there and you have to kind of break out the steps. That's how you figure it out. There is no, there's, you know, there's, I don't think there's one right way. There are many ways, right? And the one belief, it's really clear. Like, it'll be hard for you to come up with if there is no difference in your business to everyone else's and you sell the exact same thing. But I assume that's not the case. So there's something that you offer that's different. And the whole idea is to make whatever's different better in the eyes of the prospect, right? So, how do you do that? Well, that all depends on the reverse engineering that you do. But for the business growth system that takes opportunity seekers and turns them into strategic entrepreneurs, um, if I get someone to the one belief that entrepreneurs succeed, opportunity seekers fail, and right now I'm behaving like an opportunity seeker, there's only one place to go. Or if constraints determine success, not potential, and I've spent all my time adding potential and not identifying constraints, and there's someone who can tell me where my constraint is, which is the highest leverage point of my business, okay, well then I'm going to join a program called Theory of Constraints, right? So it's about figuring out what will be that point of difference. So I hope that helps, Carlos. I think I'm going to stand up for a little bit here, kind of move stuff around a little bit. Ugh. So any other questions? Let me know. If not, all right, let's see. Let's put this up here now. Boom. Totally agree with the amount of information out there. It would take all your time unless you have a way to filter it down to what you need to know. You can end up wasting tons of time trying to take it all in. Then you never get to apply it. And by the time you did apply it, you'd probably be outdated. That's my point, right? So, I would imagine for most of you, you've not really spent the time to really think about, like, well, what are these bigger questions of that I'm trying to answer? And it's interesting to spend some time like looking at your web history to get an idea of, or if you save stuff to Evernote or Pocket or read it later or any of those things, to look at what is the stuff that you consistently save and actually read and go through, right? What's the stuff that you consistently save but never go through? To get a sense of, what you'd like to get, what you'd like to consume, etc. And so I'm going to show you some of my questions, just show you some of the more recent ones, and then some older ones. Let's see. That's not going to do it. Oh, that's where I shared the thing. So let's see here. Should go there. Cool. And now I should be able to make this bigger, shouldn't I? Where do I do that? No. No. Let's see. Nope. All right. Can you guys see that? Maybe I can make this bigger. I can't. All right. Okay, cool. All righty. It's here for now. And there we go. So, good. So Carlos just said, thanks for your response. Okay, so here are my new questions that right now are on the top of my mind. How can I design and optimize an effective workflow from researching to creating to distributing content, learning, thinking, teaching, profiting, right? How can I build strategic profits into the multi-guru business of online marketing? How can I generate better ideas more often? How can I make success in business simpler, more certain, and quicker? How can I leverage tools like distinctions, mental maps, subject, object, etc., to help clients and prospects to create programs to develop a better way of becoming an entrepreneur? How can I be more purposeful in my learning? How can I create and foster better relationships with all those around me? How do I create and stick to a routine even when I'm traveling? What are the unexpressed emotions, thoughts, and beliefs that my customers and prospects are having right now? How can I reverse my biological age while time continues to press forward? How can I develop the focus, discipline, and mindset to make taking effective action my default response? How can I come across better in person and on video? How do I really make each day as fun and effective as it possibly can be? So a lot of the information that I sift through, I'm looking for stuff related to these questions. Now, when I was working more in AI, these were the questions. Some of them are similar, some of them are not. How does entrepreneurship online change with AI, data, and identity? How does marketing change with AI, data, and identity? How can an entrepreneur or marketer leverage site visitor data to make more and grow their business? How can an entrepreneur or marketer leverage data and AI to grow? After a biz has mastered visitor identity, what's the next most profitable technology tool to add to the stack? Where should we go next? How can anybody thrive in a rapidly changing world? Can a real transformation occur through online learning? If so, how? How can I be at my most effective both personally and professionally in this new age? How can I develop my own thinking tools to accelerate my creativity? How can I write prolifically? Describe where the world is heading. Describe the inner experience of entrepreneurs, peers, myself, etc., in our current times. So, what do you guys think? And now let's go back to this. Get rid of Carlos. And all right. So Sid, also that defining your set of questions problems equals taking full responsibility for the optic you're choosing to use to see your life, your creation, relationships, business, where to live, etc. Love these talks. Always grateful for the real discussion and the intelligence. Thanks, man. Um, this may be way too far afield, but can you recap your recommended way to read books and summarize key knowledge so that it is searchable and visible as a trigger when assembling content for programs, etc.? I've tried to read first and last paragraphs of each chapter to identify which are worth my time. I've tried speed reading, not too successfully. I've tried summarizing services, not too happy with them yet. Any suggestions? Blocked out of video. Who's blocked out of video? What's blocked out of video? Okay, so what I'd say, Mike, is I I spoke about it in the last live stream. So if you go to my page, either in Facebook or on YouTube, you can watch it says like how to overclock your brain. And then you could also go to YouTube and type in Rich Schefrin's reading process. It's like a 30-minute video that I recorded like a decade ago. But like that's the first process that I walk people through in this last video as well. And so I'd start with that, and then feel free after you've watched that to ask me any questions. Yeah, I, I had no success speed reading until I had an iPad, and then that changed the game for me. So check that out, Mike, and then I'd be happy to answer any questions you have. Tom said probably a lot of those questions I should be asking myself. Do you have 12 problems in your life? Okay. Or a role in your life, marketer, father, husband? Well, that's an interesting question, Mike. So, the way I learned my personal knowledge management system is very heavily based on what I've learned from this one gentleman, Tiago Ford, who teaches a class called uh, Build the Second Brain. And so, yeah, I I have projects I'm working on, like current projects. I have uh, roles and responsibilities, right? And then I have areas of focus. And so in the areas of focus are like 25 different things that I find interesting, from NLP to mindfulness to transformation, like those kinds of things. So those are just areas of interest. Above that are all my roles and responsibilities, right? And so being a great father, being a good boyfriend, a great father, a good boyfriend. No, be a great boyfriend too. And be the grower of my business, like things like that. And so I do put information in those as well. This is just an added layer, right? Of really to that I when I'm using them more frequently, because I hadn't used it in a little while, and I was glad that this kind of reignited my thinking about it. Um, I, if you can't, my fear is that many entrepreneurs, if you ask them what are like the big questions that they're trying to answer right now, they would look at you kind of lost and they're not even sure, or what are the biggest problems you're experiencing in your business right now, or what one problem, if you got rid of right now, would make the biggest difference for you, and they wouldn't be able to answer that. And so, and if they can't answer it, they're not going to find it. And if they can't find it, then where are they? And not only that, though, if you can't articulate it for yourself, then you can't ask that question to anyone else. And if you were to start asking others that question, like, "Hey, I'm trying to work on this problem. Any idea where I might be able to find an answer, or do you know anyone, etc." You can get a lot further, a lot faster. So that uh, is part of the idea here. Hopefully that helps. Oh, this is where I start to hate Facebook again. They're so heavy in these videos. Now it becomes almost impossible to simply listen to constant interruptions, page switches, etc. Oh, sorry about that. Um, Richard Kent, do I practice talking? What do you mean by that? Like, do I practice speaking? Like what I'm doing right now? No, but I get that it wouldn't be a bad idea potentially. I I should, but it's a timing thing, and I think when I have a clear workflow process, then I'll also be more motivated too. I haven't been sold yet on that I can get a bunch of things that I want to get done by doing these live streams, and if I can, the more of these things I kind of add to the output, the more time it warrants of my investment. And I enjoy doing them, so I want to invest more of my time. But in order to make that okay, uh, I have to force myself to figure out the outputs that this can ultimately create. And the more outputs it creates, the more leverage I'm getting by by adding time to it. So hopefully that makes sense. Yeah, Tiago is very interesting indeed. All right, so yeah, I got that. I got that, Sid. Um, all right, so let's see here. Now, once you know these questions, right? Like the next step is to ask others. The so I think I've told this story before, but in case for those of you who haven't heard it, well, no, most of you wouldn't have heard it. I doubt it. Actually, the let's see. I'm going to well, I'll go to Milos's question in a second. So I, had this midlife crisis, whatever, decided to take 5 years off from internet marketing plus, and even before that, though, after I took off the time, I went through a bunch of transformational programs, you could say. I was always a fan of Werner Erhard and Est. I took Landmark. I read through a lot of the materials for LifeSpring, the Wright Institute, read a lot of Heidegger and Nietzsche and Wittgenstein and Alfred Adler, etc. Right, and I was very convinced that have of the power of transformational processes, and but most people, uh, myself included, will clutch onto these non-working ways of seeing the world because giving up your worldview, giving up like how you see things, isn't easy to do, and it's scary. And so oftentimes a transformational process will be confrontational at times. Anyway, it was so impactful to me that I wanted to share uh, what the transformational process was with some of my clients. And I figured, why not combine entrepreneurship with transformation? And so I married the two together, and I I brought in someone else to co-run the program with me because I just was not comfortable that I would always say what needed to be said, personally confronting people. I'm just not the best at that since I try to avoid confrontation, and it's something that I actually have to work on, right? So anyway, so I did these three very different transformational workshops in my office. One with the psychologist who was very good at what she did, and um, we did it with a very small group of 8 people, and they got amazing results. And then I did it with a second group with the head of R&D and creator of new programs for Landmark Forum, uh, Alan, and we had a much bigger group that time, and that went really well too. And then we had the third group with Joseph Riggio, a smaller group again, and that went really well too. So very different styles. But anyway, one thing that I like to do that first night was I would have people first kind of. I'm going to go through this part fast. Well, I'll say it, and then I'll just kind of that I wanted entrepreneurs in the room to get that whatever is currently missing, like from their business, right? Like they have this vision of what their business should be. It isn't currently that, right? And there's probably elements that it currently doesn't have, like a bunch of affiliates, maybe, or a front end that converts at a really high level, or a call room center, or whatever, right? That whatever is missing from your business is not missing in the world, which means that someone else has it, and there might be a way for you to be able to use it. And so, if you think about your business, like where you want it to be when it's complete, right? What is it currently missing, right? Why? And then who do you know who might either be able to help you or know people who might be able to help you in that area, right? And so I had people like spend quite a bit of time, like uh, coming up with a list of people who they knew or who believed they knew people that could be helpful in these different areas of what's currently missing in their business but not missing in the world. And so by the time they're done, they have this really long list of people that they could actually ask for help, right, or information or whatnot from that would help them get to these specific things that are currently missing in their business a lot faster. And then we take a break for dinner. And the break for dinner is a little bit of a surprise. And the surprise is that, okay, it's 2 hours for dinner. This is, on a Friday night in Delray Beach, Atlantic Avenue, for those who know the area, and a very busy street with lots of restaurants. And you have 2 hours for dinner, but here's the catch. You cannot pay for dinner. You can't tell anyone why you can't pay for dinner. You have to get someone to give you dinner or pay for your dinner. And don't do anything illegal. And don't share what any of these details. Just recognize that in order to get dinner tonight, someone other than yourself and anyone in this group is going to be buying it for you. And we send people off, right? And I did it too, right? Because I want to practice what I preach. And the thing is that like people have these pretty profound experiences when they do this, right? And I went into a restaurant, spoke to a maitre d', said I had 3 friends with me. We're hungry. We can't afford to pay. Can you help us? And the gentleman did. And it was really fascinating how everyone kind of went through that experience, what they experienced. And when they got back, they just had they had this list waiting for them of all the people they knew who could help them potentially in these areas of their business that they hadn't asked. And yet they asked some stranger that they had never met before for dinner or to give them dinner or buy dinner, and yet they did. And so so they got the outcome. And they got the outcome by asking. And so most people, for whatever reason, never spend the time thinking about what it is they need to know and what's missing and who do they know or who knows what that I could be asking. And so back to this idea of your 12 favorite problems or 12 questions or whatever you want to call it, right? Once you have that, you now have the ability to ask other people. And when you ask other people, uh, you know, odds are someone knows someone. You're expanding your weak ties, and you are more likely to find the answer. Just like those clients of mine who made a long list of people that they could have asked that hadn't, and then went and had this experience where they asked a total stranger with nothing, no benefit in return for food. So it was really fascinating. And everyone's really quiet now, which I find is potentially, I guess, either a good thing or a horrible thing. Um, um, so I don't know if it's a good thing or a horrible thing. It's a good thing if everyone's just like on the edge of their seat and now they're going to press some kind of emoji or something. It's a horrible thing if I'm talking to myself and everyone's left. So that's at least what I was thinking. So, do we have any other questions or comments or issues or questions? And along those lines, what do you think about this? What do you think about coming up tonight with your 12 questions? Like, what 12 questions are at the very top of your list? Like, and with those 12 questions, can it help you to start to laser in on certain sources if you've never like opened Feedly and started to like populate a bunch of feeds, you know, that might be interesting. Uh, what can you do once you have those? I'd be interested to know. Hey, Chris, I didn't see you. Hey, Lisa Lang. All right. Okay, so let's go through these now. I think the PEAT method for integrating the emotional states should be interesting for you if you are interested in psychological transformation. It can resolve any fear, specific trauma, or a strong limiting belief in under 90 minutes. I'll be glad to show you the process. PEAT method. All right, I'll write that down too. Um, Definitely, I'll check it out. I'm a student. PEAT process. Um, yeah, S was really cool. Well, Warner's really cool. I met him once, but not like, don't know him or anything. Cool. Lisa Lang. Lisa is someone who I learned theory of constraints remotely from. Someone who's written a lot about theory of constraints. One of the top experts on theory of constraints, you could say. And you'd be correct in saying that. Well, Lisa, what I would say is that I have the one that is like the most important right now, and these 12 are more longer term, bigger, things that are not ever going to be necessarily checked off, but something that I just increasingly want to improve upon, potentially, explore much deeper. So I'm kind of aggregating a file if I ever decide to create a course on, or I'm looking for the answer for myself, right? So those kinds of things. But I get what you're saying, Lisa, as far as like 12 questions seems like um, could be overwhelming. And I totally would agree if this was a list like that you're looking over every day. It isn't. You have your one question maybe that you're looking at each and every day. That one that should be top of mind that would immediately be the first thing that someone would hear from you if they said, "What one question if I answered would make a difference for you?" And so that one is the one that you want to be your focusing kind of tool. And what I would also say is that one of the things that I do, and I think a lot of people do it too. I don't think it's unique to me. I don't know if I came up with it or maybe somebody else did, and I learned it from them. I really have no recollection. Oops, my desk started going down. I is that when I was doing like when I would do well, when I do private consults, a full day or 1 hour long, doesn't matter. I always start with one question, and the question is, let's say I'm doing a full day. What has to be true at the end of the day that's not true now that would make today the best investment of your life? And what I'm trying to get at from the person on the other side is the specific things that we can achieve today that By the end of the day, the person will know whether we achieve that, right? So, because, a winning campaign, we won't know the answer to that today. So, what, I'm not a copywriter per se, I'm, more of a strategist. So, uh, I want to get as clear as possible what that outcome is that would make today the best investment of their lives so that I can move everything towards that, making sure that whatever they've listed there actually it happens. And so it's kind of the same thing here. It's, you're looking for that one outcome that if you were to have sooner rather than later, it would make a difference. And because of that, that's your focusing point, you know? So I hope that helps, Lisa, and great to see you. I think we're doing something with you at some point, I think. Uh, Leon, hey, man, good thing. Here in all ears. Love your stories. All right. Taking responsibility, the story, and the fact that the human race is wired to relationship as a verb, I'll definitely do this exercise. Maybe a second version, read the business. Cool. Asking is almost magical, yet it is common that most don't do it very often because of habits or ego, whatever one has allowed to limit behavior. Yeah, and I don't understand that. Most people don't ask. Well, they like most. I don't know if it's most people. I know quite a few people who are hoping that the other person mind reads, and what a mistake, right? Um, I have so much respect for so many of the people that I'm around. Why wouldn't I ask them for their advice, their opinion, how they see things, etc.? It seems like an untapped resource if you don't. But it is interesting. I know that that's my natural inclination. I know it's not for others, so, but I don't, since it's so distant to me, I'm not sure why more people don't. Many, many thanks for this work. A Fineman that didn't know of. We'll go further into it. Cool, Sid. I'm just quiet because I'm terrified at the thought of doing that. Why are you terrified at the thought of doing that? Of, of asking people? Yeah, me too. In fact, there's something to that I still have to get over. I don't know what that is. I think I don't like to be, I'm afraid of rejection. I know that. I'd say I don't want to be vulnerable, but in a lot of ways I don't mind making myself vulnerable. But there's a rejection type of like vulnerability to rejection that I seem to avoid or something. And that's one of the reasons why I made the exercise. And it's one of the reasons why I participated because I knew I needed to. All right, yeah. Let's see. I'm really bad at asking other people for help. I try and do everything myself. My question should be asking people. Whoa! What the hell did that happen? Let's see. Uh, my question should be asking people for help with my business. I am planning to ask for some testimonials. Yeah, well, there's nothing wrong with asking for testimonials. My point is just that, well, there's a proper way to ask as well, but that the way you ask oftentimes can be very flattering if asked correctly. Why don't ask? Yeah, exactly. Oh, okay. Because I think, Rich, the systems that teach people about their living, many religious views, etc., teach shame and guilt, which closes the door to real human contact. Possibly. I don't know, Sid. Had a perspective one-on-one client who said my product delivery is why she needs but wants to do a trial to see if we are a fit. How would you respond? Um, I guess it depends. The hardball answer, which I could see, depending on, unfortunately, I guess it would depend on my mood and what was going on that day. So I don't know how I would you might not want to use how I would respond, but what I might say, depending on the day, is that there's most things in business we don't get to do a trial run, and what I would say is that the program, well, I would imagine that there's some guarantee, right? So there's a guarantee involved. And when we dabble, we get a very different result than when we're committed. And when we're committed to an outcome, uh, the world will move for us. But if we're just kind of trying things out, it's very different. So one of the reasons why someone might not be successful is they're trying lots of things, but they ain't committed. And there's a big difference between being committed and dabbling. So that's one. And and then another way to possibly handle it would be to ask some questions. Well, how will you know if we're a good fit, and how will you know if we're a bad fit? You know, and then see what this prospect has to tell you. Well, because I bet you she's very fuzzy. Well, I'll just know. Well, you see, that seems very, I think it's always good to set up criteria ahead of time because, you know, it might, if it's going to be, you know, if you need to exert yourself to get the outcome, is that going to be a challenge for you, right? Like, or I need to understand what it is that but not coming from a needy way, but as a coach, like, oh, that's very interesting. Well, tell me about that. Like, how will you determine if we're a fit or not? Like, what does that look like? Compare and contrast, like us being a good fit versus not, because I've never heard that before. I've only heard about people wanting an outcome, which is what I help people get, or something like that, Rich. All right. Good morning from New Zealand. Just joined. We'll have to look at the recording. Hey, Damon. It's likely that I need to switch from 99 problems to 12 questions. uh, yeah, it's interesting, right? I don't ask because I already imagine in advance that the person will say no. Um, it's funny because like when it comes to information, knowledge, stuff like that, I have no problem asking. And yet when it comes to like relationship type stuff or stuff like that, that's very different for me. Um, oh, thanks, Rich. Powerful people ask many times a day, to build my strength, I work on deciding how many requests can I make today without being an asshole. That's a great point. Very good point, Pat. And I don't recognize that name, so don't know if you're new or no. You're on the right track, Pat. I think. Um, I think that the more requests you make, the better off you are for it, as long as it's a give and take. As far as that, you're also willing to, uh, you know, respond positively to other people's requests. But I think that that's phenomenal. So, what else should we cover, guys? Um, my life might get a lot easier if I start making these an hour long. That's for sure. I think an hour long might be good enough. Well, I can always go long when I want to, but let's see. All right, so I'm going to give you guys like a minute or two here because it seems like there's a little bit of a delay in getting the getting your answers. But what I'm going to what I was going to say is, since I haven't said it, is join our free Facebook group, Strategic Profits, Facebook.com/groups/strategic profits. And I'm going to be putting some more stuff in there shortly. Also, if you go on YouTube, I would love it if you would subscribe to my channel. And if you're watching this on YouTube, if you can hit thumbs up or subscribe, that would be awesome too. And let me see what we have here. Most people think the answer will be no because they feel the person wouldn't have the time to do it, so they never ask. Asking the right way could really build a relationship between you and them. You made them feel more important, and they being looked up to as someone who knows something. Exactly, that's my point. I you know, take it as a compliment and give it as a compliment. I think it depends if you're focused on people or on the process. As far as whether you ask or not, oh no, at least an hour and a half. An hour is probably sufficient time, like a disc assessment. Subscribe. Cool. Thanks, Milos. So let's see. Yeah. Well, wow, it's the second time that this is. I don't. I could go on to another topic, but I think it's like 12 questions is like, this is an important thing, especially when you get the sense that if you were clear about what you were looking for, you would spot the opportunities much more often, and you can now have the conversations with others in addition to, so that they can potentially send someone your way. Carlos. Hey, Rich, being a person with an interest for information is easy to understand. Let's see, I got to make this a little bit smaller. There we go. Understand the need for a personal information management system, but what lacks is a system to decide where to focus my learnings. I used to learn for the sake of learning. Now I'm focused in what lacks and need for my business and life. Right. Okay. Well, so what I would say, Carlos, is that ideally, right, that you want to be doing it in a way where you're picking the things that your business needs that you're also interested in. And also, there's it raises red flags, Carlos. I don't know your situation, so don't take this as a judgment in any way, shape, or form. I don't know you, so how could I judge you, right? But it's a mistake that entrepreneurs often make of they have a skill, right? They have a skill that they can translate into money. Some their superpower, their whatever they're good at, right? And instead of thinking about how they can get better at what they're good at to make more, or sell more, or bring in more, and then pay someone to do a thing, they think that they need to learn the thing themselves. And there are times when you, as the owner, need to learn something, right? Many things. But so I'm not saying that learning things is bad for your business by any stretch. But I am saying that for a lot of technical stuff, at least, which I don't know if your issue or not, I'm just sharing this because in case there's anyone who might be thinking this way. Um, Whenever you put a personal goal in front of a business goal, like the likelihood of that business goal happening has just decreased, right? In addition to that, there's a very early in a business's life, past seven figures, whatever, you're going to find that the answers to problems come in people, not in boxes. And what I mean by that is you're going to hire someone to fix the problem. Um, and so, so the mistake many entrepreneurs make is instead of hiring someone to fix the problem by spending more time on what is the most important and really driving the revenue, they don't do that. Instead, they buy a course, do whatever to learn that next thing. It's kind of the same. It's like you either have something. It's the same with like media spend and media buying. Like you either have numbers that work or you don't. And there's no amount of learning media buying that's going to make up for an offer that doesn't extract the amount of money that you need to extract out of that traffic based on what the marketplace has placed value on that traffic. So, so I would just say that, like, while there are, I guess this is a really long-winded answer, but I would just say that a couple things. There are certain things that you might not ever need to learn for your business. Anything that would be done once, that would only be done and take 10 minutes if done correctly, and then never needed to be done again, is not probably something you should be learning, right? If it's how to be a better marketer, how to be a better entrepreneur overall, that makes a lot of sense to learn. Understanding how to grow your business better certainly makes sense. But when it's specific tactics or or those kinds of things, I'd be very careful to make that the thing that you feel you need to most study. And if you're not carving out some time to focus and explore your curiosities, Carlos, it would uh, I think it diminishes you. So you got to split it up because you might find the answer to your business challenge in areas, outside of it, right? By seeing a solution, getting an idea, what have you. Okay, let's see here. Sid. No, don't. No, Don, I think the real question is establishing about people's comfort and responsibility in owning a relationship. Why the guilt teaching is so toxic that one doesn't deserve, et cetera, versus choice and owning those choices. People who own their responsibilities for choice ask and give in return. I agree with that, Sid, for sure. Those 12 questions would also help you focus in what you're looking to learn and need to work on. Exactly. I'm going to challenge myself to make more requests and ask more questions these next 7 days. Challenge others to find at least one thing Rich shared and take something on as a practice or challenge to step up to. Rich, I appreciate you and this group. P.S. Werner Erhard and Landmark altered my life in major ways. Oh, very cool, Tim. There's actually, so Werner wanted to improve I think, the way he was looked at by academia. And so he partnered with I forget the guy's name, but a professor at Harvard Business School who has since retired. And they created a course on leadership that has been taught at Harvard, been taught at the U.S. Air Force Base, like a bunch of places, West Point. And it's an ontological course on leadership. And because of that, the words are very important. And because the words are very important, all the words are on the slides. And Werner and his partner in crime there wanted it to be taught all over the world. And so it is there to be downloaded for free by anyone. And that's at ssrn.org, ssrn.org, Social Science Research Network. And if you type in Werner Erhard, you will get an amazing Werner Erhard course on leadership. Some of the best ideas from Landmark, Est, etc. Really, really good. So thank you, Tim. And yeah, well, Tim, that's like, it's huge. I think that just that difference, Tim, could make a huge difference. And I guarantee you that if you started tomorrow, by Tuesday, things could be different. And I'd love it if you came back and told me if I'm full of shit or if it actually happened. Um, but so guilty of trying to master things like web design, ad creation. The only benefit is that it enables me to be, as Cy Sims would say, an educated customer. Yep, ssrn.org. Cool. All right, guys. Well, I think we will call it early again. And I am, once again, just really thankful that you guys showed up, that we were able to talk for a little while. I was able to share something with you that I learned from this time Tiago Fort. And really kind of try that on. Try on the idea of knowing what questions you're on a pursuit of. I find that I'm most engaged in life when I'm in pursuit of things. And so the more things that I can be in pursuit of, not disparate things, right? Like if you look at many of my questions, they all fall within a tight group, right? One is about what I do, one is about connecting better with the people around me. They're not like really far off. Um, it makes me more engaged in life. And one of the things that when it came all down to it, and I was wondering, like, what do I really, really want? What I really, really want at the end of the day is to be fully engaged in life, like to live my life uh, like my life was on the line at every moment, because I know it's not, right? That like to 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 yeah, to be in pursuit, to be engaged, to feel that life of that. I don't know if that makes sense. Um, yeah, I've heard about Matt Church quite a bit. I've actually, Milos, I'd love to hear more about Matt Church. I do like his pink sheet stuff. I think that's, yeah. So I'd love to talk to you about that. Yeah, definitely. Actually, private message me about that. I'd really like to see that. All right, so I will talk to everyone on Tuesday. Have a wonderful weekend to higher profits and beyond. This is Rich Sheffrin out.